everyone. My name is Jeremy. Welcome to Star Trek Wars, your official bootleg Strange New Worlds podcast. Joining me tonight, his species is blind, but that just heightens his podcast senses. It's Jordan. Hello, Jordan.
Jeremy, yeah, if you fell for it, you wore your dress uniform.
Are you hazing me again?
Oh, man. Hey, thanks for tossing me that carrot.
That's not a carrot. And joke's on you, I'm pulling the zipper down.
Wait a second, what?
On the top, Jordan, the top.
Oh, okay.
And sitting next to me, even though she got this coveted podcasting spot over 1,000 other candidates, she's still not sure she wants to be here. It's my co-host and co-life partner, Chelsea. Hello, Chelsea.
Hello. Yeah, you're right. I'm not quite sure yet.
Hopefully by episode's end.
I'll make a decision before we're done recording.
Okay. The episode we're reviewing tonight will be rated on a scale from 1 to 10 by us, the co-hosts, and you guys in the Star Trek Wars Council left a rating on our Facebook page. If you wish to join the council and have your vote counted for next week's episode, head over to that page. You can find us by searching for Star Trek Wars. The council should pop up right at the top. There you can rate episodes yourself and can also leave a comment that'll be potentially read on air. It's a great community. We're all on there very active and love talking Trek with you. Corrections Department. Now, last week's podcast ended with me saying the name of today's episode. Jordan, you thought I called it Children of the Comic, and my sickly fugue state self got so offended and screamed, "It's Comet!" Listening back, though, you were 100% right. I absolutely said comic.
Okay. I was trying to lead you into your joke that you were telling, but it was just the sickness.
It was the sick. I was done with the sickness, and I was infuriated.
You were disturbed.
You could say. And our final correction comes from Senior Council Member Wayne Fraser, who rightly pointed out that last week in my prose, I mentioned that it's perfectly fine to praise a show without dissing another, 30 seconds before trashing the Enterprise theme. Now, in my defense, I didn't mention any specific series. I just said 3 of the 4 Enterprise-related Star Trek shows have wonderful theme songs.
It's true.
All right. Well, that's that. That's it. I don't think we got anything else wrong that week, so let's get down to the business and talk about Strange New Worlds. Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Season 1, Episode 2, Children of the Comet. Written by Henry Alonso Myers and Sarah Tarkoff. Directed by Maya Vervio. While on a survey mission, the Enterprise discovers a comet is going to strike an inhabited planet. While trying to unlock the comet's secrets, Pike and Number 1 deal with a group of zealots who want to prevent any interference. Now, let's get into our brief initial reactions tonight by asking if you want this episode, if it's let's do hit it or quit it.
Wow.
And by that, I mean,
That was very articulate.
if you like this episode,
Hit it.
crazy enough is I feel better this week and it's almost screwing me up. Or quit it if you don't like this episode.
I quit. To hell with you.
Chelsea, hit it or quit it?
Hit it.
Hit it.
Hit it.
You just do it every time. What's your brief initial reactions on this week's episode?
I liked it. I don't know if that's brief enough.
Hey, almost too brief, but that gets to the point.
Yep.
If you like it, hit it.
Yep, I did.
Jordan, hit it or quit it?
I'm hitting it. Not as hard as last week, but it's a hit it for me. It was a slight step down, I think, but I think it was doing some necessary character work that will pay off later on down the road.
Yeah, agree. I hit it too. I hit it like a comet heading on a collision trajectory with Persephone 3. But in this case, my comet is not preordained to miss, but rather hit that planet head on.
Good distinction.
Thank you, Jordan. Chelsea, why don't you lead us off with prose for Children of the Comet?
I always wanted a Uhura episode, So that's pretty exciting. I feel like Pike is like the cool like dad captain. Like, does anybody get that vibe? He's just like the cool dad or like the cool teacher you had in high school.
Oh, yeah. I said last week you reminded me of myself.
That's not what I'm talking about. I said cool dad.
Please continue.
Anyway, I like that he's on board with the hazing. And I think his reaction to her showing up in her dress uniform was pretty perfect because he just kind of seems like one of the crew. I can't imagine like Picard doing that.
Yeah.
He would just like, I don't know, be way too serious about everything. Let's see here.
Until he's 93 years old.
He loosens up.
Yeah, and then he lets his hair down after it's all gone forever.
No, that's Nemesis.
Yes.
The Anar?
Yes.
Enar? I don't know which one it is, and I don't think Jeremy's being honest with me when I ask. Jordan, is it Enar or Anar?
I believe I've heard it both ways.
Yeah, the internal question.
Okay, well, I'm going to stick with Anar because it is funnier.
In this episode, they definitely go out of the way to say Enar instead of Anar.
They really did.
I'm pretty sure in Enterprise it's the Anar, but
it's like futile and futile. Like Data can say resistance is futile in First Contact, but it's Anar.
Tomato.
But it's Anar.
It starts with an A. It can't be Enar.
Anyway.
Thank you,
It's
Jordan.
just grammar.
It's just grammar.
Just basic English, guys. I was really excited about him when they started doing like the character episodes before the show.
Hemmer. Mm-hmm.
Hemmer?
Hemmer the Anar.
I need you to stop. Anyway, I wasn't expecting him to be such a sassy Anar. So that was a pleasant surprise. Him and Spock kind of just like screwing with Uhura was a lot of fun. So Spock like laughing at the end of the episode was very original series to me. Because it's always like kind of sitcom-y, right? Like they all like gather around the captain's chair and have like a chuckle about something that's kind of stupid, and then it's just credits.
And it pays off with like sometimes you just gotta laugh.
Yeah, it was very like cliche, but I liked it. I also really love the idea of just like having a prophetic comet just kind of roaming the galaxy.
Yeah.
Killing or not, whatever it feels like. Let's see. The interaction between her and Pike when he asked about her, how did he put it? 10 years or whatever, when he like had a mini stroke. I liked her answer. Like genuinely liked that. I feel like she was very humanized in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Like it wasn't like, I've always dreamed of this and I'm going to be the best. And then like her first away mission, she honestly can't believe that she's standing on a comet.
Yeah.
I don't really remember seeing that side of Starfleet much. It's always just, they've done this 1,000 times. It's just another day at work. So I thought that was kind of neat. The Shepherds had a really cool ship.
Yeah.
I really thought that Pike's reaction to them calling themselves the Shepherd was pretty on par for that character. And yeah, I think that's pretty much all I can recall.
Very good. Thank you, Chelsea.
Yep.
Jordan, you got some pros?
Yeah, I have to agree with Chelsea. I too thought that ship looked like a ship from Babylon 5. So it's a big pro for me.
I don't think it looked like a Minecraft creation. Mostly because you can't make circles like that in Minecraft. They're all like,
That's
they have
true.
like those edges. So
Like blocky,
yeah.
squared, rounded circles. This episode to me reminds me of like amalgamation of 3 different Star Trek episodes of like one part Corbomite Maneuver meets Pen Pals meets For the World Is Hollow I've Touched the Sky. Because you have a comet that has got something inside of it. You've got this planet that, although there's not really any back and forth about whether they should save the planet, which I also appreciated. Because in TNG, it's like, well, should we save these people from, this explosion killing the entire planet? And they're like, nah, we can't do it. Sorry. Wash our hands of that one. And Data's like, wait a second.
Hold up.
There's a little girl writing me letters from that planet. We can't just drive by. And then there's kind of like that moment where I guess you have that mysterious alien who's threatening to blow up the ship, but Pike doesn't really bluff. He tells him exactly what he's going to do, and he does it. And it leads to that great line where he's like, well, for the record, we're not even touching it. So I thought that was pretty great. I like the informal dinner party, just like getting the crew together, and it is very different than Picard for sure, the Next Generation. So it's kind of setting this crew and this show apart from Next Generation, from Deep Space Nine, where the characters are actually all getting together very early on and just having a dinner in the captain's quarters, which Enterprise, they do that occasionally, but it's just like the top ranking senior officers, and it's usually one or two at a time because he had very small quarters. But Pike has like a penthouse, and kind of a strange decision to have a fireplace in his room, but whatever. Like, if I found out that I would almost die from being burned alive, I don't know that I would have an open flame next to my bed, but
I mean, it's a guarantee, though, right? It's not going to hurt him for 10 more years.
It's a stone cold guarantee.
But everything's reminding him of being burned alive.
Yeah,
like, the fireplace can't help.
Maybe he's trying to get used to it because he knows that's his future.
Easing into it.
Mm-hmm.
It's true. Plus, you just smell like smoke all the time. I guess they've got good ventilation in the future, but I did like that scene. Kind of like the minor hazing. I'm not a huge fan of hazing, but just like the small... maybe you should wear your dress uniform. And the dress uniforms look to me like more modern Star Trek era uniforms than actual dress uniforms. I liked them, but they didn't look like dress uniforms. They didn't look as bad as some of the other dress uniforms we've seen, which are just uniforms that are 8 sizes too large.
Dress moo-moo.
Yes, yeah, the dress moo-moo. Get them now at the dress barn.
Dress barn.
Yeah, have you guys have dress barn?
Yeah. No. I just love the reference.
Yeah, who's like, oh, you know what ladies will love? Shopping at the dress barn. Like, come here, you heifers, buy some dresses. Like, what?
I've never thought about that. Oh, no.
Oh, my God. They don't even look like barns. They're just regular. Anyways, better character development on the secondary characters in probably the first 2 episodes. And I'm assuming by episode 5, it'll be more fleshed out than all of Discovery's secondary characters, which is a shame, but it's also really nice to have 2 different shows that do things differently. But I definitely lean towards Strange New Worlds' take that if you have this big ensemble cast, I would like to know the characters in the cast. So it is a nice kind of blending of the original series, but the original series had that issue as well, to where Uhura, like, can you name an actual Uhura episode from the original series? Not really, and we already have one here. So last week we focused on La'an quite a bit, as well as Pike, and I think Pike's obviously going to be the number 1 character, him and Spock, and number 1. But we are already getting a lot more from every character except for one that I'll mention later. Uhura not being certain if Starfleet is a place for her, I thought that was good. I know Chelsea kind of brought that up as well, as not being something that we see normally, where everyone's there as the best of the best. There's a reason that they're there, and they don't give it a second thought. It's just like they were preordained by a Comet to do this, and that's what they're going to do. So I also thought that using Uhura's job and abilities on a mission that actually pertains to her job and abilities was good, because it was written perfectly that there is. They even said like she was in rotation, I guess, for the next away mission, which you would think you would just pick who's best for the away mission. But in other shows, we see like, hey, was it Tilly or someone? It's like, I know that you were not, cut out for this, so I'm going to send you on the mission. It's like, that makes no sense. Like, you're terrible at this. Why are you sending her? Like, maybe work on that, and then we'll send you out on a deadly mission. But Uhura, she's the only one for this job. She's probably the only one that could have solved it. So it made sense, and she gets to use her abilities, and we get to see her use the gifts that she has, the thing that got her into Starfleet in the first place. There's that line where she says, you do a lot of reminding people about deadlines, when she's talking to Spock. And that is, I mean, if you watch the original series, Spock every 5 minutes is like, 4 minutes, 13 seconds. Like, it's like, okay, Spock. Total buzzkill, dude. There's a lot of, like, I just wrote down space stuff, like just exploring space, having an alien race that really doesn't do much or say anything. We just kind of see that they live on this world. they don't have a lot of moisture on this planet, and they're concerned that there's a large object in the space they've never seen before, kind of barreling towards their planet, and kind of like protecting their young as much as they can. But the big thing here is just like helping less developed species to not get obliterated, and not just because they're warp capable. Like the General Order 1 at this point seems far better to me than the Prime Directive in some ways, because Pike's like, these people are in danger. If we don't help them, they die. So we're going to help them. That's a pro for me. Neutral zone wise, I just have a couple. I feel like they might have tried to introduce almost too many characters early on. I feel like they could have saved one or two for either later on in the season or beginning of next season, because we already have a pretty substantial cast of characters. I didn't count them, but I'm assuming there's about 10 characters that they're trying to give a decent amount of screen time to. And there's only 10 episodes. So I'm just kind of concerned that it's going to be hard to give them all their moments and kind of their episodes. So there's also, kind of along those same lines, very little to no sense of danger for about 75% of these characters, because with the exceptions of La'an and Hemmer, and maybe one other, like we know about Kyle, we know about Spock, we know number 1, Pike, Uhura, like we know their fates, we know where they end up. So Samuel Kirk as well fits in this category, to where anytime something could happen, or they get infected with something, or they're in this kind of deadly scenario, there's not a huge sense of danger, which, in the original series, there isn't either for the main characters, but this is more modern storytelling where characters do die, in a fairly semi-regular basis. So it just kind of hinders that a little bit. Samuel Kirk being knocked out the whole episode after just being introduced at the end of last episode, like, I don't know, maybe don't go around touching all the alien stuff. How is this guy this high ranking? Like, no wonder he's a lieutenant 10 years from now. This guy can't keep his hands off of it. Oh, look, it's an alien thing. Let me put my hands on it. Holy cow.
And then nothing 11 years from now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yikes.
Oh, man. And then my last neutral zone is there is just a lot of singing, which unless it's like a musical or a funny episode, I'm just not a huge fan of singing, humming for long periods of time in TV shows. It's just one of the things that kind of bothers me in some ways. And like Uhura the actress has a great voice, but it's just kind of annoying to hear someone hum and make mouth noises that aren't words. I don't know. It's just, I don't know what it is about that, but my wife is the same way. So when Uhura was humming for about 30 seconds, I think I skipped forward 30 seconds and she still wasn't done. I was like, oh, okay, well. So hopefully I didn't miss anything important. If I want to watch that, just watch the short track where Spock's stuck in the turbo lift and he's singing
Right.
Modern Major General or whatever with number 1. I'm sure the Gatekeeper could have something to say about that, but I don't know. Anyways, that's all my pros, neutral zones. Solid episode, not quite as good as last week's, but definitely looking forward to Strange New Worlds every single week, and I can't wait for the new episode.
Yeah, the humming doesn't bother me. If they communicated to the Comet through whispering, that would have drove me crazy.
Yeah.
All right, so we have this destructive force on a collision course with an inhabited planet. Our heroes set out to stop it from causing destruction. We get people trying to destroy it, potential enemies with their own agendas. Our heroes eventually get close enough to make contact with this powerful entity, send out a landing party, and even though it's not the usual way of communicating, find out exactly how to speak to them. And in the end, the crisis is averted. All sides are happy. But enough about the entire 13-episode arc of Discovery, Season 4. Let's talk about this solid 1 episode of Strange New Worlds.
Communicate with math. F yeah. Math is cool.
See, guys, this story does not take 13 episodes. It took 1, and it's very solid. Pike is he's just great. I do feel bad for him, though, that where do you see yourself in 10 years question is just going to get more and more awkward.
No, that's a burning question.
Oh, boy. Beep twice for offended. Eventually, I could see this turning into, so, Cadet, do you think your life will be over as you know it in 10 years? Number 1 would be like, hey, Christopher, you don't have to keep asking them this question if it's getting uncomfortable. Yeah, that was a fun dinner. I like the light hazing. Like you said, light hazing, not ones that ended in murder and embarrassment. I like what Ortega's did with Uhura and Pike's laugh reaction to the dress uniform reveal. That was funny. It's finally Hammer time as we finally get introduced to this magnificent Anar. Him and Spock teasing Uhura was fun, as was her holding her own and responding to both of them in their own language. It's just really good.
It should be called Anar teasing.
You gotta tease your Anar.
Just some light Anar teasing.
Just common housekeeping. We learned more about Uhura in this episode than in the previous 55 years of Star Trek. Don't get me wrong, there is no denying just how important and vital the character of Uhura is and was in the history of television. Nichelle Nichols is a national treasure and was always incredible as Uhura, but it's not a secret that she wasn't given much to work with. In Strange New Worlds, we actually get to see her expertise be used to save the day, as opposed to her in The Undiscovered Country still struggling to speak basic Klingon after 30 years of run-ins with the Federation's most brutal adversary. So it's kind of played as a joke in the original series, unfortunately, but yeah, she's great here. Celia Rose Gooding is just a delight as Uhura, and the whole cast really. I'm really digging everybody. When she said she wasn't ready for all these linguistic questions, Sam told her, well, she shouldn't have picked linguistics then. That reminded me of a joke on Scrubs that I think of often for some reason. When someone knocked over a trash can, the janitor says, oh man, I don't want to clean that up. And Laverne, the sassy head nurse, says, looks like you picked the wrong day to be janitor.
Yeah.
Just for some reason, a line I think of maybe once a week after 20 years.
What?
I don't know why. It just stuck with me.
Now that's a good musical episode.
Oh, yes, very much. We didn't really mention Ethan Peck as Spock much last week, so I want to take a minute and say how much I'm liking his performance. He's not really doing a Leonard Nimoy impression, but he is truly nailing the dialogue and inflections of Mr. Nimoy, and I'm fully on board with him in this role. It's kind of ridiculous that he doesn't have chest hair, but I guess we can't. Kurtzman's going to get something wrong. So, of course, Spock is as smooth as a...
As a what?
As a shaved tribble.
Android's body.
As an Anar.
What?
Yeah, was the laugh out loud bit silly in the end? Yes, but we've seen Spock do some truly wacky things in that era, so it's perfectly fine. And the whole point of the episode, faith and science, I thought that was great. I thought it was a wonderful twist at the end. It's no surprise that religion in Star Trek has always been considered maybe a little primitive. And personally, as a young kid watching, that was a thing I loved about Trek. I'm not a religious guy. I never have been. So naturally, when these angry zealots appear on screen shouting prophecy and God's will, you automatically think, well, here's the bad guys.
Wow.
You didn't think these were bad guys? Like the comet was going toward a planet with people on it. And these guys were thinking, like, you can't, it's God's will to let these people die.
If this was Discovery, I would have thought they were bad guys. But I feel like it was kind of set up from the beginning that it was just a misunderstanding.
Yes, a misunderstanding. But I never once believed that they were anything but religious nut jobs. All right, maybe just me then. But what good Trek does is make you think or even rethink your beliefs after it's over. So the fact that Spock interacting with the comet pushed it from the planet while fertilizing with life was all preordained by the comet itself is fascinating. You know, it gets those unused brain meat muscles pulsating, and that's never a bad thing. It's important to have your own ideals and beliefs and to hold true to them, but it's equally important to allow yourself to question those beliefs, to be open to the possibilities. The potential for knowledge and advancement is equally great. Risk is our business. That's what Star Trek is all about. That's why we podcast about her. Hey guys, fun fact. In the 4 Star Trek series centered around the Enterprise, half the chief engineers are blind. Discuss.
You're not wrong.
What a weird statistic.
All right, coming up after a commercial break, we will jump into our cons. So, Star Trek Wars is a podcast that has reviewed every single episode of Star Trek. If you're looking for classic Trek, we covered all 716 episodes of the original series through Enterprise in our first 177 episodes on this feed. We've since gone on to cover the first 10 movies and all things modern Trek as well. You can find a review from every episode of Discovery, Picard, Prodigy, Lower Decks, and now, of course, Strange New Worlds. You can find every one of those right here where you're listening now on the Star Trek Wars feed. This week's Star Trek Wars episode marks our 330th episode of the podcast, so it's never been a better time to jump in. And on top of that, we also have a Patreon channel that covers a wide variety of content, both Trek-related and otherwise. For just a few dollars a month, you'll get access to all that content as well, including the Patreon show, hosted by Chelsea and myself, plus roundtables made by and for you guys listening at home. If you want to join the Patreon to support us and get access to all that additional content, and plus having a chance to get to be on a future roundtable yourself, check us out over at patreon.com/Star Trek Wars. Now let's get down to the business. All right, Chelsea, why don't you start us in with your cons?
Okay.
Cons.
Mm-hmm. I thought there was one more. Okay. Before I start with my cons, I meant to bring this up earlier, but Jordan, how did you feel about Pike's first actual dialogue being about pants this week?
Yeah, I forgot to put that in my notes as soon as I heard it. I was like, another pants joke? He's really riding the pants joke part.
He said that, I was like, oh, Jordan's going to have a heyday.
Yeah, I'm going to have a pants counter. A little ticker in the top of my screen. I think that's 3 for him and 1 for somebody else. So it's 4 pants jokes in 2 episodes.
Yeah. Well, everybody has their thing.
Yeah, it's true.
All right. So cons, I still don't like La'an. I don't know, man. Uhura was obviously very intimidated. She was out of her league. She was overwhelmed. For fuck's sake, if Spock can be understanding, do better. Because she just kind of seemed like she was trying to be even more intimidating. And that, I hate people like that. I hate it. She's uncomfortable, and you're trying to go out of your way to make her even more uncomfortable. It just seems really unnecessary. I don't like that character.
You give me a heads up next time you drop the F-bomb so I can get my...
Can't you just go back and edit it?
If only it was that simple.
It is that simple. I don't like the hinted at storyline of number 1 and Pike trying to find a way to avoid him ending up in a chair. I didn't want that to happen. I don't know. Just go with it. I don't want that to be a whole side story. Oh, we have to find a way to make sure this doesn't happen. Just accept your fate. And I don't know. I don't love that.
Well, at least it gives him something to take his mind off of the awfulness. So you're saying there's a chance. And we know that there is kind of a chance beyond what Pike has seen. Just, if you watch the Menagerie Part 2, it doesn't just all end terribly after the accident. Pike doesn't know all this stuff.
But doesn't he end up in a chair?
Yes and no.
Yes and no. Yes.
What? How do you end up in a chair?
We might have to watch the Menagerie.
Yeah, I agree. When you say Menagerie, it sounds a little more risque.
Let's see. My last con is just I miss Uhura's green star earrings that she wears in the original series.
Oh, I think you said the leaves that she uses to dance with on.
I do miss those.
No, but she would probably be just as horrified if she knew that was her future.
If she saw the
because she's super smart and ambitious, and then they're like, "Oh, don't you worry, you're gonna be a sex object, and you're gonna do a fan dance."
Touches the time crystal and sees her doing a fan dance in the desert to Toothless.
Yeah, her and Pike would need a support group at that point.
Oh man,
but that's pretty much all I have.
All right, thank you, Chelsea. Jordan, you got any cons?
I do. Just too. I just have to. I want to see a Starfleet application because I'm pretty sure there's a section that just says, "How did your parents die?" And they kind of base it off of your answer. And if it's horrible, then you get in. Goodness gracious! It reminds me of that episode of Seinfeld where George is fighting for the apartment and he has to go up against like someone who survived the Titanic and another thing, and George wins because his life was so terrible. Like every single backstory, every time they're like, "Oh, so how'd you get here?" I'm like, "Oh God, like I need some tissues and some earplugs because oh my gosh, it's like, oh, my parents died in a horrible shuttle crash accident." It's like, oh my God, every backstory is just terrible. Jocelyn kind of said that about, I forget which character. She's like, this is like, it was Picard. Yeah. It's like, this is like DC Comics. Like everyone's got a tragic backstory and their parents are dead. It's like, well, yeah, kind of. So I don't know. Didn't love that. It's fine. But if every single character has that backstory, I'm going to be a little disappointed. And I think the last con is, and it's not like it hasn't been done before, but the fact that they're like, oh, they're way more advanced than us, we got to regroup. And the answer to kind of getting the ship out of the way and buying time is one phaser blast. It's like, yeah, okay, well, how advanced are they really if you can knock them out that easy? But that was pretty much it. There's not a ton I disliked. I didn't like this episode, like I said, as much as the first one because it is a very focused story. It's told pretty well, but it's not something that we haven't really seen before in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So, but like I said, I think the character development, especially for Uhura, is going to pay off, pay dividends down the road.
Yeah, my biggest ka-on is La'an also. Just this week, though. I thought she was strong last week, but relegated to overall Debbie Downer grump this week. It's not a total loss, though. Like, it really just seems Strange New Worlds is truly going old school with its storytelling and letting other characters have the spotlight each week. So it wasn't her week. And aside from the Planet of the Week angle, that aspect is also very promising to me. Like, we're going to have, like, La'an episodes. We're going to have Uhura episodes. We'll get Hemmer episodes, you would think, going forward. There's no reason to believe that Shran's not still around. That's all I'm saying. But we're in con, so I don't want to mention Shran. No Mbenga. That's a no from me this week. It'll always be a con if I don't see Mbenga. It's just like in Boy Meets World. Any episode without Topanga, it's a no.
They really episodes without Topanga?
No.
I never watched an episode of Boy Meets World.
Okay, I've seen a couple.
I was 45 when that show came out. They really dropped the ball by not having Paul Wesley play the mustached Sam Kirk, but we're just going to have to let that go too.
Or just William Shatner.
Absolutely.
Just like old overweight with a girdle.
But like no one says a thing like, man, you look great. Just completely glaze over the fact that it's 90-year-old Shatner. It's like, hey, if Sir Patrick Stewart can do it. They should have, what's his name from Galaxy Quest? Guy.
Oh, yeah.
Who is essentially Samuel Kirk, just the mustache, like idiot character.
Yep.
Total normal dude.
Yeah, it's uncanny, their resemblance. But yeah, Sam Kirk is the older brother, right? They can make that work. It's 10 years older.
It's older than their parents.
That's really all I have for cons too. Let's go ahead and jump into fan comments and hear what you guys had to say. Wayne Fraser says, such a strong start to the series. I think this was a minor step down from the pilot, but it was still very enjoyable. Is it just me, or did we find out more about Uhura in this episode than all 3 seasons of the original series and movies? Uhura always had an interesting backstory, the little we knew of it, and this just fleshed it out organically. Nothing felt forced or included to try and address criticisms aimed at the show. I'm looking at you, Discovery. We got to see the crew socializing and getting to know each other, and that gave us background as to how they would react when faced with adversity. We were promised standalone stories, but character arcs that would continue throughout the show, and we saw that particularly with Pike, who hasn't suddenly overcome his impending trauma. It's still there, popping up when least expected. If this is how the show is going to be on a weekly basis, then we're in for a treat. P.S. OOO and Hemmer. As an Enterprise fan, I thought he was interesting. And Jeremy Reed gets to say Anar at will. Anar!
If Una's number one, I guess Hemmer's number two. Chris Roel says, what an amazing start to a Trek series. Back-to-back episodes that told different stories with overreaching subplots. Anson is quickly becoming a favorite of mine. But the whole cast has been top-notch so far. When Discovery was a little CGI obnoxious, in my opinion, Strange New Worlds has found a wonderful balance of live action and almost realistic space scenery. I fear that Strange New Worlds, if it continues on this pace, will have one downside, which is to make all other new Trek less enjoyable. Such is the bar that they have set, 9 pissed-off shepherds out of 10.
Guys, I see a lot, again, of throwing another show down just to praise Strange New Worlds. And let's rise up from that, okay? Let's be the Deep Space Nine of Star Trek, not Enterprise, okay, in our comments. Keith Danforth says, it is such a delight to finally be able to watch a more true-to-form, episodic, live-action Trek again. It's actually making it difficult to rate, because I want to just slam a 10 down on the table and walk out the door. But that wouldn't be a convincing enough pep talk. What I am enjoying is how they're taking a character like La'an in the pilot and Uhura in this week's episode and making them the focal character, with which all the other characters sort of swirl around them as they perform tasks or go on away missions. It's a sort of Trek take on the walk and talk format popular in other television series. And it introduces us to how these characters will interact with each other all season. That isn't necessarily new to Trek, but often Trek has A stories and B stories involving multiple characters on each episode. I'm okay with just sticking to one and having others frequently cross paths. I definitely want to see more Hemmer. He feels like the sort of character I enjoy, sassy, deadpan humor. I also very much enjoy that we got to see more ship in space, ship above planet, ship-to-ship combat, and basically anything involving an actual starship. 8 potential stars, if the 10 stars will it.
Kevin Leung says, this series begs the question of recreating the original series. I was once a firm believer that we shouldn't, but I truly think that it would work wonderfully. I, for one, don't watch TOS due to its 60s age. Ooh, a shot's fired at Jeremy. And I'm sure for many younger viewers it's the same. Even TNG is considered old to the new generation. Just like there are interpretations of the Bible in movies, they try to remain to its core. I'm sure Star Trek can do the same, while not pleasing all about it really has to be done. Strange New Worlds has renewed a passion for Star Trek, and in this episode is fun, yet embodies what Star Trek is, and I love it so much. I've already rewatched it 5 times so far.
Oh, nice. William Jenks says, this was another entertaining episode, and like everyone else, I'm enjoying the tone and the character development. They also managed to do their exposition dumps pretty well. So far, they seem to have learned some lessons from the other Trek series. Like last week, this was a relatively small-scale story, and I'm still good with not needing to save the universe every week. I'll note that the solution ending would have felt unsatisfying if it took 8 to 10 episodes to get to, but in a single episode without all the huge drama, the simple solution works for us. The visuals were fun for me too. I know they were only mid-quality CGI, but I enjoyed the appearance of the Shepard ship and the flight through the comet debris. My only complaint here is that Star Trek continues to show ships flying as if they are airplanes in an atmosphere and not follow the right physics, but I'll get over that. My big pro is kind of a silly one. Anyone who has watched a lot of Trek knows that Spock's personality evolved, and not just because of his aging. It varies throughout TOS more than anywhere else, but is also a bit inconsistent in the original films and then compared to the Kelvin ones. It's a matter of taste, but I like the version of Spock that can be a little cheeky, and the carrot toss was just the perfect amount of it for me. 3 neutral zones, maybe cons for me. 1, this episode was very heavy on the what if you know your future theme, as was last week's. I know that's going to be an ongoing thing, but I hope we don't have to bang so hard on it every week. I don't want Pike to be a variation of Michael Burnham if we can avoid that. 2. Other than to force another instance of the know the future thing, there was no reason to make up the nonsense of a comet knowing its future at the end of the episode. If this is an anthology show and we don't learn about sentient rocks that somehow disappear from the universe in a couple years, that was a pointless addition of terrible non-science. Please no lizard babies. And 3. And one minor quibble. The aliens on Persephone 3 should have been terrified by that much rain. Not pleased. Regardless, Strange New Worlds is off to a strong start. 7 alien dialects. I'm trying to go back to being a hard grader.
Yeah, it is. It's a little harder grading this show than the other shows for sure. Barbara Whipple says, I enjoy the show having a light feel and that we get to see the characters off duty having a party. We're getting to know a lot of them already. I was surprised at how large the captain's quarters is, though, and I had thought that Spock flying the heat-emitting shuttle was to make the Comet want to avoid the heat and move away from the planet. But I saw an explanation that he was melting a lot of the ice on the Comet, which not only dropped on the planet as rain, but reduced the size of the Comet and changed its trajectory. That was a good idea, although we saw a big chunk break off. So whatever it was, I didn't understand. It's too bad that the 2 episodes in a row we find out that someone's family had all died, though it's used as an excuse for Uhura to not go into space. They got someone to play her who can sing. Her voice is delightful, and that's my favorite moment of the episode.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you, everybody, for writing in. Let's go ahead and review this episode. Chelsea, what do you give the children of the Comet?
I'm going to give this 8 singing space rocks.
All right. Very good. Jordan?
I think that was a subplot in Star Trek V that we never saw. I give this a 7 sentient comets.
Very good. Yeah. Damn Paramount budget. I would have liked to see those. I'm going to give this one 8 shepherds. Voice of Rex from Mass Effect. Star Trek Wars Council give it an average score of a 7.9. All right. And before we get into this, it looks like it is once again time to visit the Gatekeeper of Forever. Oh, great Gatekeeper, in these troubled times, we once again call upon you and your sage wisdom.
Since before your sun burned hot in space and before your race was born, I have awaited in my parents' basement a question.
Oh, great Gatekeeper.
Is Alex Kurtzman still employed?
I'm sorry?
Is Alex Kurtzman still employed?
Oh, he's turning the tables, Chelsea. Yes, of course he's still employed.
Oh, and don't call me until he's fired. What an original story. It's not like TOS already did this episode. Who would forget a classic episode, For the World is Hollow and I've Touched the Sky. This episode should be called Kurtzman's Head is Hollow and I Wish He Did. Anyways. I miss the glory days of Trek, when little people were free to ride William Shatner around like a horse. Do you hear that? What's that sound? Pike, is that you? Oh, sorry, that's just my smoke detector. I gotta go.
You know what? I'm beginning to think that Gatekeeper is a jerk.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I think you got a point.
All right, we'll see you next week, Gatekeeper. All right, let's get to our next time ons. Now, Chelsea, for your next time on this week, we thought we would do a thing that we do on the Patreon show, which is do a little thing we call Chelsea Owns the Mad Libs, where I take the synopsis for an episode, rearrange it, and ask you for nouns and verbs and names to create your own synopsis for this week's episode.
Mm-hmm. I thought we decided they were called Chelsea Owns the Chad Chibs.
We did decide that.
Yeah, okay. I was just verifying.
I didn't know we decided that was a permanent thing, but we'll take a look at it. All right, Chelsea, are you ready for your next week's synopsis using Mad Libs?
Hit me.
Okay.
Hit it.
While on a survey mission, the Enterprise discovers a neti pot is going to munch a gummy planet. While trying to unlock the pot's secrets, Pike and Hemmer deal with a group of hemorrhoids who want to prevent any interference. In the episode, Video Games of the Meth.
It would make sense that an Anar has hemorrhoids.
Well, I think fans of Hemmer should hereby be referred to as hemorrhoids. And I have to say, after 2 episodes of Strange New Worlds, you got a big hemorrhoid right here.
Oh my God.
It's pulsating just like that guy's head.
Oh my God.
I can barely sit down. So excited. Jordan.
I don't think that's excitement. Yes, Jeremy.
Do you have an X time on?
I do have an next time on. And you're not going to believe this. We're exploring a new tropical planet. A large coconut falls and lands on Samuel Kirk's head. He is incapacitated for the duration of the episode.
Is this a pattern going forward?
It might be.
So we finally get to Operation Annihilate, and the things happen and no one is surprised. Is that why there's no emotional reactions to him dying? They're like, yeah,
he did this all the time.
Thanks to
It's like the Kenny of Star Trek.
He really is.
Just dies and gets brought back every episode.
Thanks to Strange New Worlds, we finally know the full name of number 1. It's Una Matata. Such a wonderful name. It means no worries for the rest of your days. It's a problem-free prodigy. Una Matata.
Nicely said.
Thanks, guys. And while you talk about that, I am going to computize the average score of this week's episode. Talk amongst yourselves.
Yeah, I think we're just going to rise up and revolt and say nothing. It'll be a quiet riot.
Now you're talking my language. So how did Strange New Worlds do this week? Using the combined average score of ourselves and you guys who voted at home, Children of the Comet lands with an overall score. Is that the second time?
It is.
It's Hakuna Matata is what's happening. I've said scar twice.
Scar.
Of an average score of a 7.7. And that'll do it for this week. Strange New Worlds is a podcast we do. Oh my God. It's SNW and STW. Star Trek Wars. Cutting it all out. Is available on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and anywhere else fine podcasts are heard. You can also find us on Twitter at The Star Trek Wars. If you want a shirt, hoodie, or mug, head over to redbubble.com or follow the link attached to this episode. Jordan, always a pleasure, though you didn't have to do the entire podcast in your dress uniform, which you stole at the top of the hour. Always a pleasure.
I zipped the top a little bit, so it's a little less formal and dressy, but you kind of buried the lead, Jeremy. We have a new product over on redbubble.com. It's Preparation H for all those hemorrhoids out there.
And you know who you are.
See you next week.
Chelsea, thanks for doing this with me.
Thanks for having me.
And the three of us will be back next week for the 3rd episode of Strange New Worlds titled Ghosts of Illyria. Until then,
Hidden.
all right. Well, might take some editing to get that one done, but
I don't think you should edit that out. Star Trek Wars is a podcast we do.
oh my God. I've never felt better recording it. You could not tell if you're listening to this.
Oh my God. That's like talking to a toddler.
I'm almost too awake right now. My mind is racing. I need that fog.
This is how I'm supposed to feel?
It's too much. It's too much.
Thanks for listening to Star Trek Wars.